Get back!
The earliest record we have of the exploits of one Henry Jones Jr. would be his adventures as a child in Cairo, Egypt in 1908. He would have been about 8 or 9 years old here. He starts a grand adventure that wouldn't end until years later, tracking a legendary jackal headpiece stolen from a dig in Egypt. Indy's young life was full of adventure. A few years later, in 1912, Indy almost succeeded in stealing the Cross of Coronado from a gang of grave robbers, all while on a camping trip with his Boy Scout troop. He also developed a fondness for hats and bullets during this little excursion, but that's neither here nor there. Young Henry Jones Jr. would go on to be known as Indiana Jones, the same name given to the Jones family dog they had while he was growing up.
We named the dog Indiana.
He also started trotting the globe at a young age, following his father Henry Jones Sr. around the world, as he himself was a bit of an adventuring archaeologist. More on him in a minute. But for someone so focused on the world's history, Indy rubbed elbows with lots of historical figures during his travels. Teddy Roosevelt, Ernest Hemingway, Pancho Villa, all examples of people Indy meets in the years before he becomes the hat-wearing treasure hunter we all know and love. He also used a fake name and identity to serve the French army during World War I. Now, before Raiders, which is, in this writer's opinion, the best Indiana Jones movie, there was, chronologically speaking, Temple of Doom. With lots of racist moments and a heroine who did little more than scream, be annoying, and marry Steven Spielberg later, I can't believe they got to make Last Crusade after this. But I'm glad they did, since it's a far superior movie.
No ticket.
Indy is in Club Obi-Wan in Shanghai, 1935, dealing with gangster Lao She in exchange for a diamond, the Peacock's Eye. The deal goes sideways, of course, and Indy needs an antidote for the poison he just unknowingly drank, which during the ensuing brawl and gunfight is grabbed by Willie Scott, the club singer and Lao She's so-called girlfriend.
Stay there!
Indy basically kidnaps her, takes her along on his escape, and they meet up with future Oscar winner Ke Huy Quan, or Short Round.
Holy smoke! Crash landing!
Short Round. Step on it.
They escape and make it to a plane which is unfortunately owned by Lao She. The pilots parachute out mid-flight, leaving Indy, Willie, and Short Round to crash land.
I think we got a big problem.
Which they do, and then they wind up in a village somewhere in India which has no children, which is weird. The starving villagers explain their children and the sacred stone that protects and provides for the village were taken away to Pankot Palace by the Thuggee cult, and they believe Jones and company were brought there to help them.
It is why Shiva brought you here.
They head out with some guides as Willie continues to be the worst.
Pankot? I can't go to Pankot. I'm a singer.
And they arrive at the palace, which is occupied by the child Maharaja and his prime minister, Shatar Lal. Everything seems to be kind of normal, except the food is super gross and not at all like the actual normal food from that region of the world. After thwarting an assassin, the trio find a chamber underneath Willie's room that leads to a large underground chamber where the Thuggee cult sacrifices a human to Kali, and they have the village rock and their children forced into labor. Now, turns out the child Maharaja is secretly controlled by Shatar Lal, a member of the brutal cult. The cult captures all three of them and tortures them, and forces Indy to drink the blood of Kali Ma, which puts him into a hallucinogenic trance, making him serve the cult. Short Round is thrown into the mines but escapes and breaks Indy's trance. Indy saves Willie from being sacrificed and frees the children from the mine. They barely escape across a rickety wooden bridge over crocodiles when they are cornered, and Indy destroys the bridge, dropping the Thuggee leader Mala Ram to his death with the help of some recently learned dark magic. And the local army arrives to save them and finish off what's left of the cult. Indy returns the stone to the village as their children run back home, and it seems like their crops and water supply are doing a lot better too. Now, Raiders of the Lost Ark opens up with one of Indy's most iconic scenes ever, seeking the golden idol of fertility from a temple deep in the jungles of Peru. He skims over traps, betrayals, and gets chased by a massive rolling boulder before the idol is stolen by his rival, Rene Belloc.
Dr. Jones, again we see there is nothing you can possess which I cannot take away.
He barely escapes on a pontoon plane with his friend Jacques Lindsay and his friend Reggie.
Oh, that's just Mutt. Head
Snake Reggie!
It's 1936, and Indy is tasked by U.S. Army intelligence to find the Ark of the Covenant before Hitler and the Nazis find and weaponize the ancient artifact's power for world domination.
Power of God or something.
An encrypted message reveals Indy's former mentor, Abner Ravenwood, is being watched by the Nazis because they believe Ravenwood has the headpiece to the Staff of Ra, a crucial piece in finding the Ark itself. Indy flies out to Nepal to speak to Abner's daughter Marion when it's revealed that they had some sort of inappropriate relationship when she was younger. Like a lot younger. Yeesh.
I learned to hate you in the last 10 years.
Tough and independent, Marion reveals her father is dead and she has the headpiece of the Staff of Ra, which she is also not interested in just handing over. A creepy Nazi named Arnold Todt, who followed Indy there in the first place, tries to get the artifact from Marion by force when Indy opens fire on all of them. Like, literally. Indy and Marion team up, traveling to Cairo on the trail of the Ark. Once there, they get the help of Indy's friend Sala in translating the inscriptions on Marion's headpiece. Thanks to a Nazi-sympathizing snitch of a monkey, hired swordsmen attack them in a marketplace, setting up one of Indy's best moments ever, showing this guy exactly what happens when you bring a sword to a gunfight. But Marion is stolen away in a basket and apparently killed in an explosion that Indy caused, leading him to mourn her along with that rotten snitch of a monkey. If he only knew. Belloc also pops up again, and it's clear he's searching for the Ark as well, but he's working for the Nazis.
I ought to kill you right now.
A local imam helps decode the headpiece for Indy and Sala, and they realize they have information that Belloc doesn't have, and he'll be looking in the wrong place. So they rush off to infiltrate the dig and beat them to the real location. As they do this, they realize Marion is not dead, but captured, which makes Sala's really lukewarm response to her death a little bit more acceptable.
Marion's dead. Yes, I know.
Indy and Sala retrieve the Ark from the Well of the Souls, which Belloc and the Nazis intercept before throwing Marion in the snake-covered chamber along with Indy, though they manage to escape after a couple pretty gross moments. They see the Ark getting prepared for a flight to Berlin, so they move fast to stop the plane, and there's a fight. Marion ends up decapitating someone. Several explosions happen, and the Ark gets loaded onto a truck bound for Cairo as Indy pursues on horseback. He kills lots and lots of Nazis and gets control of the truck with the Ark and successfully gets it away from their forces and boards it with Marion on a boat headed to England. They get all smoochy about it, and it really seems like a good place to end, but Belloc and the Nazis intercept their vessel using a German U-boat. They capture the Ark and Marion while Indy stows away on the U-boat, infiltrating the secret Nazi base on an undisclosed island.
Jones? Jones! I'm gonna blow up the Ark, Renee!
Indy, despite having a freaking rocket launcher, is convinced to stand down, and he and Marion are tied up and forced to stand by and watch a ceremony to open the Ark, which of course results in spirits emerging and slaying all of the Nazis horrifically. The lid of the Ark closes, and now is actually a better time to end the movie. Don't worry, there are top men taking care of the Ark now.
Top men.
Okay, maybe it's just a hangar. Remember the Cross of Coronado? Well, Indy eventually tracked it down, the relic he first stole back in 1912 as a Boy Scout. This time he steals it from the guy who paid the guy who stole it from him all those years ago.
This is the second time I've had to reclaim my property from you.
Not long after, Indy learns that his father Henry went missing while hunting for the ultimate treasure, the Holy Grail. But this guy is a secret Nazi, and he hires Indy to find his dad and run down the Holy Grail.
Eternal life, Dr. Jones. The gift of youth to whoever drinks from the Grail.
The first stop is Venice, Italy, where Indy meets Elsa Schneider, who is also a secret Nazi. They almost get assassinated a few times while tracking down the Grail, following the trail of breadcrumbs left behind by Henry Sr. This leads them to a castle in Austria, which absolutely is also a secret Nazi base.
I hate these guys.
And it's where they're keeping Henry Sr.
Junior?
They almost immediately get caught. Schneider reveals her secret and heads to Berlin with Henry Sr.'s diary, chock full of info to lead them straight to the Holy Grail's final resting place. The Henrys make their way to Berlin, where Indy encounters the worst Nazi of them all, but more importantly, he recovers his father's diary.
Let's get the hell out of here.
In their escape, the Henrys survive an encounter with 2 machine gun-toting fighter planes.
I'm sorry. They got us.
This leads the Henrys to Hate and their old pal Sala, and the Nazis gathered there also have another old friend of the Joneses, Marcus Brody. He's held captive. The Nazis are trying to make their way past booby traps to reach the Holy Grail, but all they wind up doing is losing their heads. Once Marcus blows their cover, the Nazis force Indy through the booby traps by shooting Henry Sr. and saying water from the Holy Grail would be the only thing that could save him. So Indy does the thing. He makes it through the booby traps and to the final chamber where he meets an ancient knight who has to have been bored out of his mind because he'd been guarding the Grail for hundreds of years by himself.
I knew you would come. My strength has left me.
By then, the Nazis make their way into the chamber and everybody's basically gotta guess which Grail is the holiest one, and Donovan, our main secret Nazi, makes an unwise choice.
He chose poorly.
Indy, though, wisely chooses the Cup of a Carpenter, which turns out to be the real thing. Problem is, you can't take the Grail past the big seal on the floor in the first big room they were in, so after Indy uses the Grail to save his dad, Schneider makes the super smart move of trying to take it out of there, which does not work.
The knight warned us not to take the Grail from here.
The temple collapses and the floor opens up, and she dies trying to reach the Grail in the chaos. Indy almost makes that same mistake, but chooses his father's outstretched hand in the end, a move that saves his life. Though the Grail was lost in the temple ruins, Indy, Henry, and Marcus all survive the ordeal somehow, and they ride off into the sunset talking about how their friendship was the real treasure all along. Jumping forward more than 20 years after Raiders, when Indy took up learning the saxophone while living off the grid in Montana. And years after that, he infiltrated a US military base in Nevada. This is just outside Hangar 51, which famously houses both the Ark of the Covenant and the alien remains from Roswell. Psychic / high-ranking KGB agent / winner of World's Worst Haircut, Arino Spalko makes Jones lead the Soviet agents to Hangar 51's alien remains, which he does with the help of its magnetic field. But he turns on them just as they're cutting open the package of still steaming hot alien jerky when Indy's associate Mac then double-crosses him.
Why, Mac?
There's a Jeep ramming face-off in the hangar leading to the Ark's crate getting damaged, and Indy momentarily escapes into a town only to have one of his most notorious moments ever. In a bad way. When he jumps into a lead-lined fridge to avoid being nuked in a military test zone. Revealing his father Henry Sr. had passed away, Jones thinks there's nothing left for him at the university, so he heads away and meets Mutt Williams,
Hey, old man!
who wants Jones to help him save Professor Harold Oxley, Indy's old friend who was obsessed with crystal skulls. Hey, just like the name of the movie.
Found some type of skull. Crystal skull.
They are suddenly attacked by the KGB, who they fight before they fly off to Peru to pursue Oxley's crystal skull-lined trail, winding up in the tomb of a conquistador who sought the skulls.
What are we looking for? I don't know yet.
They kill some indigenous people guarding the tomb of an elongated skull skeletons, and they eventually find a crystal skull, which is magnetized like the alien corpse from before.
What is this thing?
But of course, they get captured by the KGB.
Hello, Jonesy.
Hello, Mac.
Spalko suggests the skulls can be used for mind control, which she wants to use to make the Soviets win the Cold War by making everyone in the world become a communist. Spalko intends to blackmail Indy into helping her further by threatening Mutt's mother, Marion Ravenwood.
Indiana Jones.
Oxley, who is alive and deranged by staring into the crystal skull's eyes, reveals clues in a way only Indy can understand,
That opes the palace of eternity.
and they put the pieces together to locate the tomb of Akator. Marion reveals that, yes, Mutt is Indy's son, which you already knew, and they apparently ended things on bad terms when Indy broke things off a week before their wedding.
I think we both knew, Marion, it wasn't gonna work.
You didn't know that. Why didn't you ever talk to me about it?
They escape from the Soviets a few times, more punching, and Mutt faces Spalko on top of moving cars and swings around the trees with monkeys, and a well-timed ant attack keeps the Soviets at bay. Mac reveals he's actually CIA, making him a triple agent, and he joins the newly warming up to each other family plus Oxley as they separate from the Soviets and make their way to return the skull to its original cave by dropping down 3 waterfalls in their car. They make it to the temple and solve puzzles while Mac drops tracking beacons for the Soviets. Psych, just a double agent looks like. He's working for the bad guys after all. In a room with 13 crystal alien skeletons, Spalko realizes they are a hive mind and reunites the skull they were fighting for with the one headless body. Oxley speaks for the crystal bodies, who are grateful and would like to leave them with a gift, and Spalko asks for knowledge.
Tell me everything you know.
The skull eyes smoke, the room spins, Oxley regains his grasp on reality and says they're not aliens but interdimensional beings.
What are they, spacemen?
Interdimensional beings, in point of fact.
All the minions get sucked into another dimension, the temple disappears, Spalko explodes, a flying saucer appears and leaves, and all the good guys make it out alive.
Why don't you stick around, Junior?
Finally, Indy and Marion get married for real this time, and at the end, Mutt puts on Indy's hat, and no one likes it. Quick break from the movies for a second, because there are a bunch of Indiana Jones video games going back to 1982 when Raiders of the Lost Ark released on the original Atari console, to these days when Bethesda's got a full-blown AAA Indiana Jones title in the works right now. And for the most part, most of these games aren't included in the official Indiana Jones canon, but Indiana Jones and the Fate of Atlantis is probably the most important one. Released back in 1992, Fate of Atlantis was written and created by Hal Barwood, who also worked on the original Indy films. The game was originally based on an unused movie script for what was then known as Indy 4. Of course, we now know they went a different way with it, but Fate of Atlantis was probably the best Indy game of all time, and shares lots of guts with the movie continuity. Of course, that brings us to Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, which does a lot of work to properly end the saga. No spoilers, but Indy and a few other recurring and new characters actually get a decent finale.
Those days have come and gone. Perhaps not.
It's not quite the final note Last Crusade would have been, but we really couldn't end on how Crystal Skull left it. Mutt had the hat? Ridiculous. But as long as Young Indiana Jones Chronicles is considered part of the canon, and it is, then we know that Indy has to survive the Dial of Destiny and live to be the eye patch-wearing old man telling the stories of adventures in Chronicles.
Why aren't you kids in class?
The episodes of the show were kind of presented as this elderly, one-eyed version of Indy recounting his many adventures as a young man, as an old man. So that means Indy is gonna have to survive any more adventures that come his way in Dial of Destiny or beyond.
I've been looking for this all my life.
Hey, thanks for watching, and for more Indy, here's our full review of Dial of Destiny, so make sure to check that out, and don't forget to follow and subscribe to IGN, wherever you like to watch.